Alrighty, hello everybody. Before we get into any of this episode, I'm gonna sort of subvert the norm, and I'm gonna get Calvin to introduce this episode of that LCO show. Calvin, take us away.
Okay, and ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the LCO show. This is episode 4. Joining me here is Maximize, and today we do not have any guests, unfortunately. I don't think that really matters. To be honest, I think
are so sore.
Your eardrums?
They're so sore. That was incredibly loud. That was a great introduction.
Wait, really?
Yeah, fantastic
Wait.
work. Okay. Anyway, yes, as Calvin said, we do not have any guests this week. We thought that, we're gonna come back to the Center 2. We've had 2 episodes in a row now with guests, so we're gonna save it for when there's a really big week. We can get some people on. But today we're sort of changing up how we're doing the podcast. So if you guys have listened to the last 3 episodes, we have sort of been doing a weekly review, and then we've been breaking down like every single game, right? Like we've been going through all the games that have happened. And we just feel that that's not really the most fun way that we could be doing our show. And frankly, Calvin, we're all about fun.
We are indeed all about fun. So the main thing that we're going to change is, so we're not going to review all the games. And at the same time, we're trying to incorporate a little more of the dramas, the unexpected things that happen during the week for LCO.
Absolutely. So, jumping into it, we are going to start off with our standings recap, which sees, yet again, Peace at the top, boasting a 6-0 record. The only team to remain undefeated in the LCO. Calvin, they've looked absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, Peace, we put them like 5th place, at the beginning of this split, they are definitely proving. I'm pretty sure they proved like 90% of the people wrong, right? At least for the people that have done power rankings. Everyone's rating Chiefs, they're rating Pentanet, they're rating Order, and then and then Peace comes after.
Yeah, completely flipped the script. We've been saying this literally every week so far, that they've just been playing really well, and we've sort of been wondering if that's going to come to an end, and it doesn't look like it has, because they've already beaten the Chiefs. That was the only other undefeated team, so now they stand alone at the top of the scoreboard. Another team that I think has equally defied expectations is Mammoth, who currently sit at 3-3, tied with Order and PGG. Calvin, how does a team paying their players like a fraction of what PGG and Order are getting have the same record?
You sure it's only a fraction? I'm pretty sure they don't get paid
dividing by 0
almost anything
is impossible. Right? So
that's fair. Anyway. That is fair. But yeah, I mean, 2 weeks ago, right? If you tell me week 3 standings, I'm gonna see Mammoth tied with Pentanet and Order.
Yeah,
I'm gonna say that guy's delusional.
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt about it that no one expected Mammoth to have 3 wins at this stage in the competition. No one.
I think Mammoth, something is just right with them, right? Whether it's just the environment, that everyone's just enjoying the game, whether there's just some prodigy that we never expected. I think Mammoth, they have withered basically the hardest week, right? They've played against Pentanet. I think have they played against Order?
No,
maybe not.
They play against Order next
I think
week.
they have played. They played against Peace.
Yep.
Now, they have defeated Gravitas, they have defeated Kanga, so the only, the few teams left is Chiefs, and then you have Dire Wolves. I think the Dire Wolves game versus Mammoth might be a highlight, because that will prove, again, whether Mammoth is just fluking, or whether they are actually,
Dire Wolves already played Mammoth, right?
Have they played Mammoth?
Yeah, I think they've played every team except Order. Because they're 3-3.
Oh wait, that is true, because it's...
Guys, don't listen to Calvin, okay?
Oh my god, I'm trolling. I am definitely trolling.
He's had a long day at work.
It is late. We are starting the recording.
Yes, we are. It actually is my mom's birthday, so happy birthday, mom, if you're watching this. Anyway.
Happy birthday, mom.
Okay, not your mom, mate.
Okay. Not my mom, but yes.
Okay. Anyway, one thing I did want to say about Mammoth before we move on is, I think what's happened with that team is, ever since they've been PGG, they've just seemed so confident in all of their games, right? They've just had this energy of these young rookie players who are really hungry to win, and you see it in their player cams, right? They're all just absolutely ecstatic whenever they're in a winning situation in the game, and that can really help propel a team to victory. Calvin, there's a sadder team in the league. Possibly the saddest out of all of them. A team that has fallen much lower than we placed them at the start of the season. What's happening with Kanga?
They definitely fell from grace there, right? Like, it's the same thing. 2 weeks ago, if you tell me that Kanga is dead last with Gravitas tied at 1 and 5th, I mean, I wouldn't say delusional, but like I would guess that their schedule is like Chiefs, Pentanet, Peace, and Order.
Yeah, and the
right?
thing...
That is what I would expect.
The thing is, right, is you look at the standings, they're 1-5, so is Gravitas. But if you take into account head-to-head, they've just lost to Gravitas, right? Gravitas has only one win, and that's versus Kanga. So if you're actually considering the head-to-head, Kanga would be placed 8th. And this is just a team that has imploded. Like, I'm not seeing anything good from this team at this stage. There are no sparks of life. Drafting is really weird. They picked... Do you remember they picked Cogmore with Hecarim?
Yeah, they picked Cogmore mid
when you
Hecarim,
can just slap an Ori in that spot and win the game instantly. I think with that draft, right, you can even pick Kale and you'll still win. I think
sure. Just something that fights.
I think that whole team is just really struggling to find its identity. And until they do, I don't really see them winning against any of the top teams. Like, even games against Mammoth and Gravitas will be close, right? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. The thing with Kanga, right, I think, like you said, I don't see an identity in that team, which is a big problem because at the beginning of the split, we were thinking that, all right, it is going to be that topside trio. It is going to be Lived, Only, and Changi. Changi has been on Macro Champions last year on Order. Only has been carrying the map like on every single game he's played last year. And then you see Lived being that top lane monster last year on Chiefs, solo killing anyone and basically, putting himself on like carry champions like Camille, Fiora, etc. And we're just not seeing any of those this year.
Yeah, I think even the game, if you take the game versus Gravitas as a sort of example for what went wrong, they are just so disjointed as a unit. Like, you'd find there was a particular fight that I remember in the game where they're engaging around Dragon. Liv's playing Camille, finds a great engage onto the enemy AD carry, but no one follows up. Like, he's literally just 1v5ing in the enemy team. No one's committing, no one's trusting him to like go in with him for him to be that go button. And when you're playing as a team, it's almost always better to do the perceived, I guess, quote unquote, wrong thing as a unit than to all be doing separate things. Because you're never going to win a team game if everyone is playing for their own goal.
Yeah, and you say, like, no one is trusting Only, right? But, like, in my eyes, I think no one is trusting anyone. Like, that's the problem, right? Like, the bot lane doesn't seem like they have any trust in each other. And then you've also got Only just engaging with no one following up. Lived isn't confident enough to split push. He has been on tanky champions for the last couple of weeks, and just nothing working out. Like, even Changi, like, looking at his picks, right? Like, he was on a comfortable pick on Orianna, and then he's just picking whatever he wants, in the Cogmore and stuff. So something definitely is going terribly wrong behind the scene for Kanga. And I really wish they make some change going into next week.
Yeah, I mean, we just can't... Like, they just can't keep showing like this, right? It's just not what the org... And not what the players want to be doing, right? Like, these players are not 8th place players, right? Like, you look at this team, and there's a reason we place them sort of within playoffs reach, within playoffs contention, certainly. It's because they have these players with so much experience. And sure, the bot lane's a question mark, right? But the bot lane being inexperienced isn't the only issue here, right? So I think Kanga really need to just strip it all down, go back to square one, have those arguments, right? Get into a Discord call. I remember, Calvin, we did this when things were going terribly
we definitely did.
last year. And everyone you just yell at each other. You tell them exactly what they're doing wrong, what you think they should be doing better, and you hash it out. Because this whole, like, oh, we're going to tiptoe around it, we're not going to address the issue is not working. It's never going to work. Like, have those hard conversations and fix the issue.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, like, there really is no reason to just say, oh, guys, I don't want to disrupt the environment. Let's just throw it out. Like, any problem you have, you should just throw it out. Like, this applies to any team, basically. Yeah. Right? If a team cares so much about, like, all right, I just want to, keep everything steady. I don't really... like I don't really want to go at each other and then like try to sort of solve it through time. It's not gonna work. Like you won't have enough time.
You're never gonna win.
To sort of you won't have enough time to sort of get back onto track because things don't really solve itself.
Yeah, and that's why you see, I mean, all the top players in sort of any sport, right? Like you take, for example, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan. Like those are some of the players that immediately come to mind. Like they are known for being like tough but fair but tough teammates, right? Like they will call someone out if they're doing something wrong. Like in this team, there needs to be. I mean, this should come from the coaches, right? This should come from the people who are seeing it all. But they should just be facilitating the conversation, and pointing those things out. Anyway, that's enough ragging on Kanga. I hope that they can fix their issues. I really love, the players on that team. I think they're all really deserving of, something better than what they're showing. Right now.
I think like a lot of people do care about this team, right? I tweeted about Kanga. Rusty tweeted about Kanga right after LCO.
Yeah.
This week as well, and many people just wonders what the heck happened. But anyway, this is enough for this topic. Let's move on to the next one because it is the highlight of the week where we have Chiefs versus Peace, two undefeated teams clashing at each other and Peace coming out on top.
I mean, this is the game so far of the LCO in my opinion. The storylines coming into it, you obviously have the two undefeated teams, the top of the league teams, and no one was really sure, like up until this point, how to gauge them. The predictions were very, very split on this game. I predicted Peace correctly. Just saying. But like up until this point, the styles of play were almost, they weren't very similar at all. So it was sort of a just complete wild guess as to how these teams would fare when they played against each other. I think, Calvin, if you want to talk over the draft, I think the draft we sort of get to see exactly how these teams want to play and like a hint of the underlying style of these players.
Yeah, and Peace basically like they're very LPL-esque, right? Their coaches are from like LPL or LDL, if I remember correctly, and it shows from their play style. They love fighting. They're not afraid of pulling the trigger. And then you look at Chiefs. They're just that team that, fits the narrative. They just keep playing for that late game. They picked Zeri, they picked Corki, but it just wasn't enough.
Yeah, and that's one point I actually find quite interesting, is that both Zeri and Corki were gotten on blue side, which we don't see very often at all. Those two champions are essentially the strongest on the patch, like by consensus, right? Like I think everyone would put Zeri first when it was available for LCO, and then Corki definitely strong just behind that, because this is pre-nerf Corki. This is 12-2 Corki. So seeing both of those go over and Chiefs still not win the game is pretty impressive. One thing I do want to touch on with the draft is you look at, so the Peace lanes were Jace into Gragas, Syndra into Corki, and Caitlyn Lux into Zeri Leona. Now you look at that's 3 winning lanes right there. Right? Like, that is a pretty good draft from the side of the Peace.
Yes, 100%. I think, Caitlyn outranges Zeri. Syndra definitely a better lane bully than Corki. And then you have Jace that just, farms really well into Gragas because Gragas won't be able to punish him.
And when I was talking a bit about, like, what this says about the players, I think it speaks to Peace's confidence, right? Like, all of these champions that they're piloting and these lanes, yes, they're winning, but there's sort of that caveat of, okay, if I don't respect their jungler, if I don't play well around the sort of flow of the game, I can definitely just go 0-10, right, and lose the games. But so I think Peace having the confidence to pick these champions, like the biggest thing is the Lux Caitlyn versus Zeri Leona. Like that lane is so snowbally. If Zeri and Leona even get like the smallest advantage, they'll just completely run over that, right? But I think Beats and Cheon. Shout out Cheon, we'll get to him a bit later, but they played a stellar game.
I mean, shout out to Beats as well, right? Like, Beats, for the last 3 weeks, he has been performing extremely well and is looking like one of, if not the best support in the league. So, props to this bot lane. Definitely surprised everyone. And I do want to talk about, the draft a little bit, because Corki, Zeri going through, it is very hard on paper for Peace to win post like 30 minutes, right? Like Zeri is probably unbeatable, and then Corki just sort of deletes you from 2 screens away. And And this draft, like the only sort of loose condition for this draft is to fail early game. And I think this moves on to the next point where I want to say, what I want to highlight is that Tally has been bullied out almost every laning phase in LCO so far.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's an excuse that he's picking Corky, but I think if you do watch the laning phase, he is sort of getting abused a bit more than he should, right? Like, I think when you pick Corky, your objective is to just be completely stable, but we saw it from Kisei as well when they faced up.
Yeah.
I think it was the same matchup, actually, Syndra into Corky. There was just complete dominance in the mid lane. And that's really dangerous when you are picking a scaling champion, because you sort of have to, if you let your opponent do whatever they want in the early game and they're never getting punished at all, it can become really, really snowbally and beyond your scaling to fix, right? So I think we will see less Corky, obviously, in the coming weeks, but I think a lot of mid laners in the LCO have actually not been able to part this champion as well as they should be.
Yeah, 100%. And then at the same time, we also have Arthur and Draku actually just underperforming this week. And Arthur in particular, you know, a lot of his early games, just like Tally, you know, he does fumble quite a bit in the early game, getting caught out and just dying, really.
It's not even the early game, and this is, I know, for our repeated listeners, like, this will kind of sound like I'm just playing a broken record at this point, but he, literally every single week, he's had a one game, if not two, where he's just made absolutely boneheaded mistakes that have cost his team big advantages.
Yes.
Like, in this game, he literally hits a blast cone on vision into 4 piece members and dies. Like,
yep.
What? Like, I don't get it, and it's not a one-off thing. It's been happening every single week. I just don't get it.
Yeah, and at this point, like, I do question, like, you know, is this actually Arthur's level, or is this some sort of like ego or something, you know? Oh, I don't care, I'm just gonna go in because I won't lose, right? Like, people have to respect me, but then obviously it's just like a glaring mistake that, you know, Peace will just punish. Because because if you look at how Arthur plays, right, like, it's not like this guy have no hands.
Yeah.
You know, this guy's mechanics is definitely great, but he is making a lot of questionable plays that, you know, relies on the enemy over-respecting him.
Yeah, I to answer your question, I don't know, because I don't think we can sort of give him the pass anymore of being like, oh, he's just ego tripping on anyone, because even if you are, like, if you do that consistently enough, it becomes a habit, and that's a weakness as a player, right? So I think the fact that we've seen this so repeatedly is just really frustrating to watch as an audience and as a fan of good League of Legends in the region, because you're expecting this guy to be the best, the second, like, top 2 at least, right, with Belkan, if not the best jungler, right? Like, that's what you brought him in from the LCK for, to dominate the competition, and he's simply, not only is he not dominating, but he's being a liability for his team. Anyway, gonna stop the Arthur hate for now. Let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on from this, because you know, again, I do hope Chiefs sort of bounce back a little bit, improve the early game, and I do want to see Peace going for that 7-0, you know, undefeated in the first round robin. And this is something that, you know, no one would expect, because you know, coming in between 2021 2022, you know, they've made such a big roster change that no one really expected this. However, next point, it is the MVP of the week.
So, Calvin, you actually voted for someone different than me this week. I think this is the first time we've had split votes on who the MVP should be. Do you want to introduce your nominee for the MVP of the Week award?
All right. So my nominee was Lisa from Peace. So I think Lisa has played a really crucial role in both games of LCO, you know, against the Chiefs and against Gravitas. Obviously, Gravitas, the one is sort of like less important, I would say, because like Peace, like overall, like they just have better players, right? Yeah. They will outclass eventually if the game is pretty even. But I do think that Lisa has played a really important role in enabling the team to carry in basically like almost all of Peace's games. So and I think, you know, people don't give him enough credit. And it's a common thing for, you know, supports and junglers that, you know, they enable the team, but then they don't get enough credit. So I was going to give this MVP to Lisa this week. However, we do have another spectacular player that played phenomenally this week.
Yeah, and especially in the Chiefs Peace game. I think if anyone watched this game, they would definitely be able to tell me that the MVP of week 3 of the LCO is Cheon, but boasting a 16-1 scoreline as Caitlyn with the first ever LCO Penta of 2022. This guy, like, talk about defying expectations. People had so many question marks about him coming into the split, and ever since the year started, he has done nothing but shut everyone up.
Yeah, I mean, Cheon, like, actually, one thing I do want to highlight is, I didn't realize Cheon had a previous record in competitive League of Legends. So his previous IGN was Desire Me.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually didn't know that. I actually did not know that.
Oh, really?
So
yeah, it's been like that for a while.
I didn't.
It was like that for
Oh, really?
I think it was only this year that he decided to change.
Right, yeah, because like I remember like a couple years ago when he was playing in OCS, I was saying, wow, this guy's actually really good. And yeah, and I never knew that he name changed to Cheon, and the fact that his last year's performance wasn't that great, like I just completely forgot about Desire Me. I've completely disregarded him, but he is proving me wrong, and I guess he is picking up that 2020 OCS steam. And yeah, I mean, Cheon, this guy, much better than I expected him to perform coming into LCS.
And that sort of raises the question as to what are they feeding the AD carries in the Peace House? Because they trained out Violet, who, let's be honest, before 2021, Violet wasn't considered the superstar that he is today, right? Like, he wasn't the best AD carry in the region, like smashing everyone. He wasn't doing that until he joined Peace, and then that was his breakout year. And we're sort of seeing the same pattern emerge with Cheon, right? Like, decent AD carry, hops on Peace. What the fuck happens? He's suddenly turbo smurfing every single game, right? How much of that is due to supports? We don't know. Because if we're saying, which I think we are, that Beats is currently the best support in the league, does that elevate Cheon's performance like it did with Aladoric? Because the thing I'm seeing here is that if you look at these both rosters, 2021 and 2022, we could say that both Violet and Cheon played with the respective best supports in the league at that time.
Yeah, 100%, because like I said just then, right, Cheon last year didn't look particularly good because he was paired with Zingy, right? I think Zingy had a pretty terrible performance last year, but this guy's gone, so let's not talk about this guy. Let's talk about Cheon Beats, because Beats is, just getting better and better year after year, right? 2020 on Gravitas, he was 1-20 in terms of
1-20
score.
He was actually 1-20.
Yeah.
That's
yeah. I mean, GRV was 1-20.
He has really built it out of the mud, hasn't he? He's really come up.
Yeah, right. I mean, so is Puma, right? But then Beats, like going from 1-20 Gravitas to Order, peaking at second place regular season, to now Peace completely undefeated. And this guy is looking like just best support in the league. And now he's paired with Cheon. I think, a big part of Cheon's performance comes from Beats. But at the same time, Cheon, he might just be the next Violet.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to wait and see. But the way he has played this week, especially, is certainly a good indication of things to come. That sort of wraps up our abbreviated coverage of the week. But we have a whole bunch of changes coming in for the next week of the LCO, and that is patch 12.3. Calvin, this patch is absolutely huge. Do you want to run us through some stuff that it covers and how it's going to affect the games?
Patch 12.3 is like an interesting one because Riot finally, I guess, decides to target sort of the unnatural thing about bruisers in the previous meta, right? Like, bruiser items were tankier than tank items, and they were like still doing damage because they are, at the end of the day, damage items, right? So they're toning down a little bit of the tankiness, and they're just amping up a little bit more damage. So it will be interesting to see what sort of what comes out of that, because as far as I know, some pretty insane numbers have come out, like especially with items like Death Dance, the Aatrox healing with it, the Varenga healing with it, etc. And so item changes, I think there might be some bruiser that benefits a lot, but the highlight, I think everyone would agree, is Ahri.
Yeah, we'll get to item changes in a minute. But Ari has essentially received a pretty big update. So she's now got a new spell vamp mechanic. So every 9 minions or monsters that she kills, she regenerates a bit of health. And on takedown, she also regenerates health. So she's sort of gained a bit more sustainability in fights. And she's got a new ult reset mechanic. So for those of you, you've probably been playing solo queue with it for a while. You'll notice that whenever Ari gets a takedown during the duration of her ult, she gains another charge. So we talked about Kanga before, but one player who I would absolutely love to see bring this out is our good mate Chungi.
Yeah, I mean, Chang'e was a renowned Ari player within OC solo queue, and he even played a few Ari games every year he has played competitively. So, would be interesting to see Chang'e pulling out Ari, because Ari definitely received a lot of good changes. And just one thing I do want to correct, Max, is the spell vamp thing, because like Ari did have this spell vamp previously. I think they just made it a little bit more readily available, and also it sort of acts like a triumph. Right, like you kill a champion and then you just instantly heal a bunch of health.
And it's more consistent. So, I think that's the thing that they were trying to change, because like if you hit, like previously, if you like used your E
you have to
hit one thing, right, compared to your Q to hit everything, right, you'd sort of want to use your Q only to spam on a bunch of things, whereas this makes it more like you can cast whatever you want, and you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. And the other thing is like the reliability of her kit, because now that you have ult resets, you can have at most 8 casts of your ultimate, right? If you get a pentakill,
that's
obviously.
insane.
Like, penta assist. That is insane. 8 dashes, and also the fact that I believe the dash now starts on your first cast, like the ult cooldown starts on your first on your thing. It might just be a PBE thing, and they might have reverted it, but like what I do notice is that Ari's ult feels extremely short.
Or
maybe it's just because I haven't played
I played a game of Ari in solo. I played a game of Ari in solo queue today, and definitely, I think extra mobility on a champion is almost always beneficial, right? Like having
100%.
that extra resets is crazy. Anyway, back to the item changes, because I think this actually has a huge impact on the meta that we're going to be seeing. So previously on 12.2, the most common junglers that we saw were the likes of Lee Sin, Xin Zhao, Jarvan, etc. Like the beefy boys who go Gordrinker, Sterax in their full build, right? Like all you're doing is engaging for your team, dying, and hoping your team wins the fight. So I think it's going to be interesting to see if like their prevalence remains the same, because obviously they're losing a fair bit of tankiness on the Gordrinker, and Sterax like right now is not that great of an item, to be honest. Like compared to old Sterax, this new one is sort of a lot, like it gives you a lot less than what you've been hoping for. I guess the trade-off is Death Stance, right? But building Death Stance, you're actually quite squishy in terms of pure HP, right? If you build Gordrinker into Death Stance, sure you have armor and you have the Ignore Pain passive, but like you are actually very squishy as a champion. So I'm wondering whether we'll see different champions start to seep into the meta now that the beefy boys aren't as beefy.
Yeah, I mean, they have introduced quite a bit of synergy, like with champions, right? Sterix and Death Dance now scale with AD, so the champions that love AD, Camille, for example, and also like a lot of champions that have inbuilt AD, Jin, etc.
Yep.
Like they might just abuse some of these items. But also one thing I do want to bring up is that Trinity Force, have received quite a decent change, and then I'm not sure whether that affects Sterix, because Sterix gets AD according to your base stats now, right? Base AD. So, not sure whether there's like good interactions or not between these two items, but it does seem like Riot is trying to push Bruises back into the more damage-oriented, damage focus, instead of being like that tanky boy that is kind of unkillable once you hit that 3-4 item mark.
Yeah, and I love it. I love particularly the Trinity Force change that you just mentioned. I think it makes no sense. Like, for the last, I would say even a year, Divine Sunder has just been better than Trinity Force in, 99% of situations. Because you do more damage, you heal more, and you're tankier, right? Like, why would you ever pick Trinity Force? You get attack speed, right? I think changing them so their stats are essentially the exact same, it's more about the passive that you want. Like, whether you want the passive that's going to be good against tanks, or the passive that's just more consistent across the board, I think that's a really, really good change. And it's going to mean that you can vary up your builds, right? Like Camille's won't always build Divine Sunderer now, you know? They can start branching out into the Triforce. So I really think this is a great change. Another one that I want to talk about quickly is more. Hex Drinker is now an item that you can actually buy. Previously, if you bought Hex Drinker, you were just trolling. Like, just sit on a Negatron Cloak, right? You'll get way more value for less cost. But now you can actually buy it. It has pretty nice ability haste and pretty nice AD. So it feels pretty good on champions like the Lee Sin.
Yeah, and the shield is absolutely insane. Yeah. Like, it scales with AD, and I have witnessed, like, such a massive shield. Like, as a mid-lane mage player, I absolutely hate this item.
Yeah, well...
You know, when I go into solo queue, I see people build more Malmortiers and have a shield that sort of covers half of the HP bar. I'm just like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, because you get Death Stance, right? So you got the armor from that plus the Ignore Pain passive. Then you get even the Hex Shrinker. And suddenly you're, like, impervious to both AD and AP damage. So, yeah, I think it's definitely improved the survivability of some champions who can build this. I just don't want to see another meta where we see Death Stance built by every single AD carry. Which I think we might, to be honest.
To be fair, I don't really think so, because, you know, with AD carries you do build Zeal, so like you do have lower AD, and as far as I've seen, like Death Stance don't heal a lot unless you have like, I don't know, like 500 AD or something like that, like something insane.
True.
But you know, I have seen Jhin basically healing back to full just off one kill.
Yeah.
Like I have seen that. I have seen Aatrox like being completely unkillable. I have seen Mundo that build Death Stance, just trying it out. Because Mundo do get, you know, quite a bit of AD when he's low health, and honestly, I think this is the item to watch. Like, you know, what champions can build this item? I feel like that might just change the meta.
One last thing about Death Stance before we move back to the champions that have changed.
We love Death Stance.
But I actually think that its passive can sometimes be a bit counterproductive, right? Like, I think having the ability to delay your damage is good in most circumstances, but in this circumstances, like, say you build a Serax, right? Say you build a Maw. All this damage that you're going to take, it could potentially, like, the damage that you take can run out, like, it can still be ticking after your shield expires. So, I think Death Stance, in terms of overall synergy, yes, it's still very good. I think that is something I just wanted to point out, because it makes me sound smart. Now I feel really dumb, because
you're always smart, Max.
Thank you. Anyway,
it's okay.
We talked about Corki before, receiving some changes. So he is now, his package, original pickup changed from 8 minutes to now 10, and is restocking every 5 minutes instead of 4. The main thing that I saw immediately, Calvin, when I looked at this was dragon timers, right?
Yes.
Corki was previously known as being a stupidly oppressive champion at dragon, because all he does is pick up package, run there, and wins the fight. Like, it takes so much skill to be able to win a fight against a Corki with package that it almost made the game unfair.
Yeah, I mean, but like the thing is, this is basically just a revert to when Corki was absolutely shit tier champion. So I don't really know like whether Riot's targeting this correctly, because like so the restocking time, you know, going from 4 minutes back to 5 minutes, and also like 8 minutes to 10 minutes for the initial pickup time, like these are reverts. So, you know, if some of you have played League of Legends, you know, back in probably like 3-4 years, maybe even 5 years ago, like Dragon used to be 6 minutes. So when they changed Dragon from 6 minutes to 5 minutes, that was when Corki's package went from 5 minutes to 4 minutes. And then the Corki initial pickup time went down from 10 minutes to 8 minutes because Corki was just unplayable. Like, the champion, all of its damage budget just was put into that package, and you don't have access to it until 10 minutes. So they are reverting back, you know, they are reverting Corki back to that stage where, you know, everyone thinks it's shit. But the only difference is that his ult is untouched, right? He is still going to delete people when he has 3 items.
I quite like this change.
Identity change.
Yeah, I quite like this change because, like you said, the package, I feel, was a bit too overpowered. And I think that with the item changes, like, obviously the item changes are what allow Corki to be that late game monster that he is currently, right? Like, he's still going to shoot a rocket that does half health like half LCR AD carry. But I think that changing this means that you give teams a bit more outplay potential, because we don't want to see games, right, where you pick Corki, you give like the first 2 dragons, and then every dragon after that is just unfightable because Corki's 2 items and has package every fight, right? Like, I think making the restock timer longer is really good. And the original package 8 to 10 minutes just means you have an extra 2-minute window to be able to contest that first dragon if your other team is playing against Corki. So overall, really nice change in my opinion. Quickly, Zeri got nerfed. Lost a bit of movement speed, lost a bit of damage on her basic attack.
She's still strong.
She's still strong.
I think she's still strong.
But they're trying to, if anyone has read the patch
they're trying to push her back to crit.
Yeah, they're trying to push her back to crit, because the Trinity Force build where you go Black Cleaver, Titanic Hydra, and have 4,000 health is just not fun for anyone, right? No one likes, I remember Tank Echo, Tank Fizz, no one likes a champion that is unkillable, but also will one-shot you, right? Like, no one enjoys that. So the way they've sort of tried to do that is by taking away some of the initial power from her ult, but the chain damage that your attacks now do can now crit. So I don't know if we will see Zeri build crit. I'm not sure how big of an effect this will have on builds, but it is something to note.
I mean, just a little quick hint, right? Like, I follow Riot Flox's Twitter account, so this guy's like the lead balance guy. Yeah. So he tweets out, like, you know, what's the upcoming changes. And they are nerfing, like, 12.4, they're nerfing Zeri, nerfing her synergy with Navori Quickblade, and also Mana Mune. So definitely something is up with that. So I tried it in practice too, right? So, yeah, so her Q will have, like, a static cooldown, right, of, like, 0.66 seconds or something. Yeah. So, like, you can only have 1.5 attack speed maximum. But Navori Quickblade actually breaks it. So, like, you can actually go, like, machine gun Zeri if you have Navori Quickblade and enough.
If you, like, had a macro, you could, in theory, just queue, like, an insane amount of times every second. Or you just button mash the key.
I mean, I wouldn't say insane, but, like, you would probably, like, double your DPS just because, like, you have enough crit. And Navori Quickblade will just reduce your CD.
I'm surprised no one found that before.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, that was kind of surprising because, I mean, it's probably, like, the logical thing, right? When you look at the spell, like, okay, you are locked at a certain cooldown, but it is ultimately a spell.
Yeah.
So, exactly. So I'm surprised no one figured that out. You know, everyone's just hyping up this Trinity Force, tanky bruiser build. But, I guess someone decides to try it out. Navori Quickblade Zeri, maybe it is the build for 12.3. And also Mana Mune, that, the fact that Zeri's Q counts as both, like, sort of auto attack and spell at the moment. Yeah. You stack up tier insanely quickly, like insane.
That'd probably be like that'd probably be the fastest tier stacking champion in the game. Like
because it's just stack on cooldown, right?
Even faster than Ezreal, because your Q
reminds me of.
Go ahead.
It reminds me of old Jace when you can just press R
just transform, or Singed where you just keep pressing your toggle would stack tier. That was fun.
That was fun.
Anyway. This brings us on to next week is the first Super Week of the LCO, so 3 games. I wanted to talk quickly, Calvin. Do you actually think that playing 3 games a week instead of 2 has, like, any sort of impact on players overall, or how a team approaches a Super Week?
I think Super Week mostly put stress on coaches more than anything. So, like,
okay, dude, sympathy. All right, everyone cry for Calvin. It's really tough.
Come on, like the amount of preparation you have to put in, like, to prepare for 3 teams, you have to balance out, okay, I'm scrimming the same amount of games, but I have to prep for 3 teams instead of 2.
Yeah.
So, like, it is a lot more stress on coaches, I think, from my previous experience. For players, obviously, you have to think a little more as well, because, like, instead of playing against, like, 2 top laners, 2 mid laners, you have to play against 3. How does that affect how your preparation coming up? But I think the bigger toll comes from consecutive Super Weeks, right? Because LCO is going to have consecutive Super
3
Weeks.
in a row.
And we will see how teams adapt week 2 and week 3 of Super Week. And that is probably a topic that we will touch on next week.
Yeah, and I think one other thing from the player sort of perspective is when you look at your scrim partners that are available for Super Weeks, if you have a really strong schedule, like, let's say we're Order right now, right? And let's say, hypothetically, in a Super Week, we're playing Chiefs, PGG, Peace, right? suddenly we can't play any of those 3 teams in scrims, right? Because that's just how. For those of you who don't know, that's how scrims sort of work, right? You don't practice against the team.
Yeah, it's like an underlying
you're going to be
right?
playing in that week. So you're left with Gravitas, Mammoth, Kanga, Direwolves, right? Like that's not good. That is not good practice if you're a top tier team, right? Like you want to be testing against the other teams. So what can happen in a super week if you get a bad schedule is you're left with weeks of practice where you're not really getting that much value out of it. And obviously you have less time to practice, right? Super weeks only leave 3 days for scrims if you're having one off day. So I think player burnout is something that can definitely occur during these weeks if you are, still playing those 3 games because they're stressful, right? Like, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Every game you go into is stressful, especially if you're playing, an opponent that's close to you in the ladder or you're against someone you've flamed in solo queue. There's always some burden on you to perform. So having that 3 times a week for 3 weeks in a row is definitely big.
Yeah, 100%. And talking about insane games and stuff, what do you think is the match of the week for the first Super Week, Max?
So I actually think there are 2 games of the week. I couldn't decide. I'm a bit indecisive in regards to this because I think there are 2 really good games and I couldn't reason as to why.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so we have the first game that we have is Chiefs versus Order, which I think, if you look at the scoreboard right now,
it's a rematch, right?
Yeah, it's a rematch. And then Peace versus PGG was the other one. So Peace versus PGG rematch of the last split finals and split 1 finals too, actually. So seeing how these teams will clash, I guess. Now, with Peace being on top of the leaderboard will be great. And then Chiefs vs Order is a chance for Order to get their revenge from the game that we thought they had in the bag, to be honest, after that great early game. So it'll be interesting to see if they've learnt their mistakes and can actually close out the game this time.
Yeah, and I mean I do agree, these two games are probably the match of the week, and I personally want to see Chiefs versus Order a little more. I think Peace at the moment looks better than PGG, so I kind of just think that this, although it's probably going to be close, but I do think Peace will win out. But I do want to see whether Chiefs will step up and whether Order will prove that they are a top tier team, because they look like a top tier team, but their scoreline is 3-3.
Yeah, I think that the next step for Order is in the second round robin to start taking games off these top teams, right? Like if you want to be a top team, you have to prove that you can go up against the best and win, right? Like currently they've lost to PGG, they've lost to Chiefs, they've lost to Peace, right? Those are the big 3.
Yep.
Besides Order. When you're going into this round robin, you need to be beating those teams. Just so, because if you don't, right, if you go 0-2 against all the top teams, it gives you a really bad seeding for playoffs, right? Because it doesn't give you any potential to get into that top 3. And if you're not in the top 3, it's top 1 gets a bye, and top 3 is upper bracket. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so top 3 is upper bracket, which just gives you it's so much better to be in the upper bracket. Gives you a whole nother set that you can lose and still be in contention. Whereas if you're coming into the playoffs 4th and 5th, every game is do or die. And there's so much added pressure that comes with that. So yeah, big week for Order. Big week for almost every team. I'm just really excited to see 3 days of games. I think it'll be great.
100%. And so I think that comes to the end for our podcast today, for this week. And Max, so you asked me to do an introduction.
Yes.
Now I'm going to ask you to do an ending.
Well, it's actually kind of funny because we before we started recording, we talked about how this episode's probably going to be shorter than our other ones, and I'm looking now and it's just hit 44 minutes.
Right?
So it's going to be essentially the same length as our other ones. So I guess our abbreviated format isn't really...
We'll get better.
We'll get better. We will cut down and stuff. But yes, thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you have enjoyed the new sort of format, the new approach that we've been taking. Please leave us feedback. Stuff we can improve on, stuff you like. We love hearing it. We love improving the podcast, making sure we're staying better than the match fix as always. Check us out on our socials, that LCO show on everything. And we look forward to seeing you guys again next week. Thanks for joining me, Calvin.
Bye-bye.
See ya.